The royal decree has just been issued. Meghan Markle's last privilege has been completely stripped away. On King Charles's desk is a 64-page forensic audit report submitted by Princess Anne. It exposes an intricate network of offshore accounts. Top-secret palace information was leaked in exchange for hundreds of thousands of pounds. King Charles coldly signs his name. William slams the file shut. In California, Harry sinks into absolute panic. He has just realized he is bearing the entire legal risk on both continents. Why is this dirty money entirely unassociated with Meghan's name? How did Harry turn into the scapegoat on legal documents? What do the 64 pages of audit contain that caused Hollywood to unanimously freeze their collaborations? The morning of April 2nd, 2025, Buckingham Palace was immersed in the familiar, bustling rhythm of the tourist season. Visitors formed long queues outside the main gate, taking photos with the red-coated guards. Inside, in a completely isolated world in the basement of the North Wing, the Royal Financial Archives room was so quiet that the hiss of the ventilation system could be clearly heard. The room reeked of old paper and dry printer ink. Rows of scratched oak tables lay beneath the cold fluorescent lights. Mrs. Margaret Hartley, a 55-year-old chief accountant, pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose. She had worked here for 20 years, knowing every single penny in the Mountbatten-Windsor family's treasury. Her task this week was extremely tedious, conducting the routine year-end audit of the Sussex's old expenditures. Even though Harry and Meghan had left long ago, the accounting books during their time as working members still had to be reviewed under the new financial law. Everything looked very normal at first. Clothing shopping invoices, travel expenses, staff salaries. But by the late afternoon of April 5th, 2025, when Hartley flipped to the statement file of a supplementary credit card, her fingers abruptly stopped. She discovered a series of transactions that were not in the expenditure category. They were incoming cash flows. Sometimes £10,000, other times £25,000. There were amounts up to £50,000. They did not come from King Charles's allocated funds or any legitimate personal income source of Harry's. These figures continuously poured into an intermediary bank account under the name of an anonymous company. Hartley pulled the desk lamp closer, taking a red pen to circle the timeline of the received funds. The intuition of a seasoned accountant told her that something was extremely wrong. This cash flow was not a bookkeeping error. It was a currency collection pipeline drilled right through the royal security wall. To understand how this pipeline operates, imagine you are the product development director of Apple. You hold the blueprint of the upcoming iPhone in your hands. You cannot take that drawing and stand in the middle of a market to sell it. Instead, you set up an offshore technology consulting company. You recount the design details to a tech news site. That news site does not pay to buy the news. They sign a contract paying a strategic consulting fee to your company. Legitimate money flows into the account. The news appears on the front pages. Your hands are completely clean. The financial network of the Sussexes operated on precisely this mechanism. Hartley tracked the cash flows and realized their origins were not in the UK. All payments were initiated from media companies, press representative offices, and entertainment conglomerates headquartered in Los Angeles, USA. They were camouflaged under categories such as market research fees, content consulting, or project development fees. The cash flow from LA shot into an intermediary account, then was fragmented and circulated to erase its tracks before landing neatly in the recipient's pocket. What made this mechanism terrifying did not lie in the amount of money. It lay in the goods being exchanged. When Hartley opened the royal family's top-secret internal schedule to cross-reference with the dates the money was received, the numbers matched so perfectly it was chilling. The money was transferred just a few hours after internal palace information appeared on American tabloid pages. Not trivial rumours, those were extremely precise details about events unfolding behind closed doors, where phones were banned and only a few core members were present. This was a systematic act of selling internal information. The trust, the silence, and the confidentiality of the dynasty had been packaged, labelled as consulting, and sold for hundreds of thousands of pounds. This plundering behaviour did not occur randomly. It was meticulously calculated through each specific event. Margaret Hartley created an Excel spreadsheet listing the 3 most typical acts of selling news as evidence. The first act took place in July 2019. Baby Archie's christening was held entirely in private. The British royal family mandated absolute confidentiality regarding the guest list and the names of the godparents. Exactly 25 people were present at the chapel in Windsor Castle that day. But the very evening before the ceremony took place, a sum of £10,000 was transferred from an entertainment company in Los Angeles into the secret account. The next morning, an American newspaper published perfectly accurate details about the ceremony's script, the types of flowers used, and the tense attitudes among the royal members present. The second act took place in October 2019. In the drawing room of Clarence House, a top-secret briefing was held to finalise the stops on the Sussex's South African tour. The meeting was attended only by senior secretaries and diplomatic officials. 48 hours after the meeting ended, an international money transfer order worth £25,000 was recorded. The very next day, an exclusive article appeared in an American newspaper quoting exactly every word spoken by the diplomatic advisors and revealing the detailed travel itinerary even before Buckingham Palace could issue a press release. All of Britain's security measures were exposed by a money-transferring mouse click from the west coast of America. The third act, also the most audacious one, fell in early January 2020. The closed-door strategic meeting at Sandringham, where King Charles, then Prince of Wales, Prince William and Queen Elizabeth II sat down to determine Harry's future. While the family was still arguing bitterly behind tightly closed oak doors, a massive transfer order worth £50,000 was activated. Just a few hours later, the meeting's content, the Queen's disappointed attitude and William's anger were splashed in detail across the front pages, with a perspective that turned Harry and Meghan into oppressed victims. The British royal family was being drained from its very own internal wounds. Realising that the severity of the incident had far exceeded the authority of an accountant, Hartley immediately stamped a red top secret mark on the file and submitted it straight to the highest level. A few days later, this file sat on the desks of Prince William and Princess Anne. They realised the royal family was not only facing smearing articles, but its security structure was being sabotaged by insiders. Princess Anne ordered the legal shell of the receiving account to be relentlessly peeled back to the core. London's best forensic financial experts were summoned. They traced back the tax codes, checked the registration documents in the British Virgin Islands, and cross-referenced the original signatures of the shell company establishment contracts in Delaware. The results returned left everyone present in the meeting room dead silent. Throughout the process of selling news in exchange for cash, Meghan Markle's name did not appear on a single receipt, transfer slip, or legal document. She was completely uninvolved in terms of assets and did not leave even a single digital fingerprint. The person named as the owner of the secret account, the only one who put pen to paper signing the media consulting contracts to receive hundreds of thousands of pounds of dirty money, was none other than Prince Harry. If Meghan was the one operating the media network and connecting with the American press, how could she wipe clean all her traces and push the very husband who always swore to protect her with his life onto the legal scaffold? Right from her early days stepping into the royal family, Meghan Markle quickly realised the harsh truth about the dynasty's money. Buckingham Palace might possess magnificent castles and priceless crown collections, but royal members did not hold personal financial freedom in their hands. They received a fixed annual grant from the sovereign grant, an income from King Charles's Duchy of Cornwall. Every expense, from clothing shopping and travel to estate renovations, was strictly monitored down to the penny by the Royal Accounting Office. For someone accustomed to Hollywood's commercial mindset, the fixed salary of a crown-wearing royal civil servant was an unacceptable constraint. Meghan wanted to maximise the global heat from her title to create a colossal financial empire. Most importantly, she wanted to possess total control over that cash flow in complete secrecy, outside the scanning range of the palace auditors. To materialise this ambition, starting in late 2018, Meghan began establishing an incredibly sophisticated offshore financial architecture. Her first act was adamantly refusing to use the royal family's internal financial channels for personal projects. Instead of letting the palace office negotiate and receive sponsorships or gifts, she arbitrarily routed them through a private consulting network. The second act was far more complex, requiring the intervention of the world's top tax evasion experts. In March 2019, a shell company was registered in the US state of Delaware. This state is famous as a corporate privacy haven, where you can open a company with tens of millions of dollars in revenue, while its headquarters address is merely a P.O. box nestled in a shabby shopping mall. This company had no employees whatsoever, no physical office, and absolutely no business activity reports. However, Delaware was only the first layer of camouflage. To wipe clean the identity of the ultimate beneficiary, this company continued to have its ownership linked to another proxy organisation based in the British Virgin Islands. In the BVI, shareholder identities are absolutely protected by law and are never provided to any foreign government without an international court order. Finally, the cash flow from American media conglomerates would pass through the Delaware company, bounce through the BVI, and land safely in an anonymous bank account opened in the Channel Islands, located right off the coast of England. A perfect dirty money circulation pipeline had been built. Meghan used the very most precious internal information of the palace as her business capital. She turned family members' trust into commercial data packages, funneling them to American newspapers and entertainment companies in exchange for massive numbers continuously jumping up in her offshore accounts. Her goal was extremely clear: drain the throne's commercial value before cutting ties with them. Prince William and Princess Anne stood on a completely opposite front. They did not view the royal family as a personal brand launchpad or a reality TV show to be auctioned off for money. To them, the dynasty is a sacred constitutional institution, existing on the basis of dignity, transparency, and the absolute trust of the public. Princess Anne grew up with the late Queen Elizabeth II's principle of serving without demanding reciprocation. Prince William carried the weight of a future king on his shoulders, clearly understanding that if the British people discovered that royal members were secretly selling national information for personal gain, the monarchy's foundation would collapse instantly. The greatest goal of the two was to protect the royal family's security structure at all costs, while simultaneously uprooting every illegal financial network clinging to the family's reputation. Their fierce resolve was demonstrated through two extremely decisive reactionary acts upon receiving the report from Chief Accountant Margaret Hartley. The first act belonged to Prince William. He did not summon media crisis management, experts or image consultants to find a way to cover up the incident. William immediately blocked all internal data access rights for all staff who had ever worked for the Sussexes. He personally brought the file containing the abnormal bank transactions to meet Princess Anne, who was renowned as the toughest and most incorruptible member of the royal family. William knew well that this matter required an iron hand unswayed by family sentiment to handle. The second act was executed by Princess Anne herself. She immediately bypassed the palace's entire standard internal audit apparatus out of fear of information leaks. Anne secretly mobilized a team of independent forensic financial experts from London's economic intelligence agencies. She granted them special immunity, allowing them direct access to the servers of intermediary banks without needing approval from Buckingham Palace's communications office. William and Anne's goals collided head-on with Meghan's ambition. One side wanted to exploit the royal family's highly guarded secrecy to quietly enrich themselves. The other side was determined to use the strictest financial laws to strip bare every business scheme hiding behind titles. The palace could not accept that loyalty and top-secret internal meetings were being weighed and measured into cash on offshore financial reports. This difference in core value systems made a fiery clash inevitable. The clash between the two forces did not explode in a loud quarrel in the press. It took place in the cold silence of highly lethal administrative procedures. The morning of March 31st, 2025, in Prince William's private office at Kensington Palace. The thick velvet curtains were drawn, blocking out the sunlight. On the solid oak desk, the preliminary report from the forensic financial experts lay open. This document had redrawn the entire path of the cash flow from Los Angeles to the Channel Islands, perfectly matching the schedule of top-secret meetings leaked in 2019 and 2020. William sat in his armchair, turning each page of the document. He carefully read every statement line, every Delaware shell company name. Upon reaching the last page, William closed the file. The future king sat motionless. The silence enveloping the room was so tense that the ticking second hand of the antique clock on the mantelpiece could be clearly heard. 1 minute passed. William raised his head to look straight into the eyes of the financial investigation team leader. His teeth clenched tight, his jaw muscle twitching slightly. He uttered exactly 3 short words that carried the weight of the entire dynasty. Everything ends here. That very afternoon, the British royal family issued an internal memo stamped with the highest level of security. This document officially announced the appointment of forensic financial officers to conduct a comprehensive review of the Sussexes' assets under Princess Anne's direct command. An encrypted copy of this document was sent straight to Harry and Meghan's legal representation team in California, attaching a demand that they explain the origin of the cash flows pouring into the Channel Islands accounts within 48 hours. Across the ocean, Meghan's office in California reacted with a familiar, evasive tactic. They maintained complete silence toward the royal family, failing to return any financial explanation document. Instead, her spokespeople immediately leaked news to friendly entertainment tabloids in America. They released vague statements about how the Sussexes always upheld transparency and were being targeted by a new smear campaign from London. However, they absolutely avoided mentioning the offshore financial structure, not saying a single word about the companies in Delaware or the BVI. This cover-up was the very act that ignited an irreversible, legal, all-out offensive. The refusal to cooperate from California wiped clean any chance of resolving the matter internally within the family. It gave Princess Anne the perfect excuse to escalate the investigation to the most ruthless level. In early April 2025, Princess Anne officially took over all executive power regarding this case. At St James's Palace, an isolated area rarely snooped on by the media, Anne chaired an emergency meeting that lasted for 4 solid hours. Attending the meeting were the Lord Chamberlain of Buckingham Palace, Chief Accountant Margaret Hartley, and the entire team of senior forensic financial experts. She did not sit down in the chair of honour, but stood tall, right at the head of the table, her steely voice ringing out, cutting through the tense atmosphere. Anne ordered a total sweep to be conducted within exactly 72 hours across all financial management departments, from Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace to Clarence House. Every computer hard drive, every file drawer from 2018 onwards had to be sealed and cross-checked. More terrifyingly, she demanded the use of royal prerogative to issue emergency subpoenas for dozens of former staff who had worked for the Sussexes. These individuals were forced to appear in London and provide sworn testimony before the lawyers of the throne. They would face the risk of imprisonment for violating the Official Secrets Act if they concealed any shady transactions of their former employers. This decision by Princess Anne permanently changed the nature of the matter. This was no longer a family squabble over who was treated unfairly in the press. It had officially turned into a hunt for economic criminals using the state's most powerful legal tools. There was no room for weeping press releases. Everything now spoke only through cold audit numbers and bank statements stamped with red seals. This comprehensive review not only exposed how Meghan leaked information, but it also dissected another ruthless truth buried deep in the legal documents being stored in California. How had the financial trap that Meghan, whether unintentionally or deliberately, laid out over the past 3 years, pushed her own husband, Prince Harry, into a deadly dead end? In early November 2025, the Forensic Financial Report, exactly 64 pages thick, was bound with crossing stamps and carefully placed on Prince William's desk. The independent investigators did not merely task themselves with tracing the path of the dirty cash flows. They also used technology to recover a series of internal emails that had been deliberately deleted since 2019. This report exposed in detail how Meghan used the executive power of their joint office at the time to create countless administrative hurdles to stall Princess Catherine's philanthropic projects. The schedule for announcing Catherine's health campaigns was continuously delayed by Meghan's office under the pretext of overload, cutting support staff, or deliberately pushing the timing to overlap with major international tours to dilute media attention. More terrifyingly, the report pointed out a direct link between these administrative decisions and the articles appearing in the US media right after, manipulating public opinion to tear down the Princess of Wales's prestige and elevate the Sussex's image. Prince William read each page of the document, his facial expression hardening. Buckingham Palace immediately achieved an unprecedented absolute unity. During an internal family meeting, William bluntly declared that no exceptions or leniency would be allowed to exist when the dynasty's structure was violated. The strongest resistance, however, came from Princess Catherine's resilient silence. She did not raise her voice in resentment or demand a public confrontation. Instead, Catherine quietly instructed her private team of secretaries to prepare to take on a slew of additional royal public duties. She was ready to work overtime, increasing her presence at charities to fill the public opinion void and solidify the monarchy's robust image the moment this information-selling scandal was officially brought to light. While the British royal family was sharpening its legal sword in London, investigative experts discovered another shocking truth buried deep in tax records and corporate law in the state of California. They realized that all core assets, shares in media production companies, and Meghan's profitable business structure were not in her name at all. They were legally registered under the names of the two children, Archie and Lilibet, operating in the form of asset trusts for minors. This sophisticated financial technique created an impenetrable fortress, helping the entire massive fortune amassed from selling information evade any asset seizure orders or civil investigations from authorities, because the law always protects the assets of children. Yet, what sent shivers down the spines of legal experts lay in the initial operating licenses from 2019, the time the shell companies began to form and receive the shady cash flows. On those core legally binding documents, the person who put pen to paper was none other than Prince Harry, in his capacity as a senior royal representative at that time. When his private team of lawyers in California analysed the current situation, they clearly outlined for Harry that he was bearing full legal responsibility without actually owning any of the actual assets. Harry fell into a state of sheer panic upon realising he was tightly bound in a perfect trap set by his own wife. All legal risks, all threats of prosecution for financial fraud charges from the UK or US tax authorities were bearing down on his head, while he himself had absolutely no right to dictate the cash flows sitting in the trust funds. The prince immediately withdrew from all media activities, completely ceased speaking out to challenge his family, and began rummaging back through the entire timeline of contracts he had signed with utter dread. The morning of December 12, 2025, Princess Anne summoned a final consolidated meeting in the secure area of Buckingham Palace. The audit summary was projected onto the large screen, proving with undeniable figures that the offshore structures were deliberately built from the beginning to conceal the cash flow smuggled from internal royal information. The file also affirmed that Meghan Markle was the one manipulating the flow and enjoying the most precise economic benefits through intermediary accounts, even though she did not leave a liable signature. Princess Anne coldly closed the file. Standing before senior officials of the cabinet and the dynasty, she issued the final order in a voice unmixed with a single drop of personal sentiment, asserting the crown would never be compromised and demanding that punitive steps be carried out immediately. The royal decree was officially signed and passed by King Charles III just before noon that day. Meghan was permanently stripped of all financial privileges, rights to utilise personnel, or any logistical support remaining from her time as a working member of the royal family. All her past transactions were placed under the continuous surveillance of British financial intelligence agencies. The most devastating blow occurred when the 64-page report, accompanied by all digital evidence and sworn testimony from former staff, was copied into multiple editions. They were sent straight to the diplomatic representatives of the Commonwealth as a warning message, accompanied by Princess Anne's firm handwritten note: "Misconduct will never find a sanctuary in the House of Windsor." The moment information from this file leaked to the American elite, Meghan's public relations team in California was completely paralyzed. The closest allies in Hollywood, giant entertainment partners, and investors who once sought after them, unanimously announced the freezing or suspension of all collaboration contracts due to the immense reputational risk. Meghan tried to reactivate her old tactic, contacting friendly journalists to turn herself into a victim discriminated against and oppressed by the royal family, in order to call upon public pity. But this time, sitting neatly on the desks of the American media were not emotional complaints, but cold forensic audit numbers, clear bank transaction evidence, and unbendable legal documents. The decree of December 12, 2025, put a ruthless end to all of Meghan Markle's royal privileges. Up to the present moment in 2026, how has the outcome of this legal and financial war settled, when the person bearing the heaviest consequences is the exiled prince himself? May 2026. The 64-page financial report has been out for 5 months, but its destructive power is still tearing through the lives of those involved. In California, the Sussex's glamorous pace of life completely frozen. Meghan Markle is locked tight in her Montecito mansion. Calls to Hollywood media moguls are no longer picked up. The public relations team that once took the press by storm is now completely paralyzed. You cannot hire a crisis management expert to argue against international money transfer numbers from the Channel Islands. With no more top-secret palace information to leak, her core income source is cleanly severed. The royal decree has turned her into a name carrying far too much commercial risk for any entertainment partner. Harry's state is far more tragic. He is bearing the direct consequences of the business licenses bearing his own signature. These days, Harry has to work with a team of criminal defense lawyers instead of documentary film producers. The US tax authority and investigators from the British Parliament have put him in their crosshairs. He has no right to control the tens of millions of dollars sitting safely in Archie and Lilibet's trust funds, yet is the only one bound by legal responsibility for the financial violations. From a prince who once proudly abandoned his homeland for love, Harry now lives in utter torment, trapped in a legal cage designed by his own wife. In London, Prince William is cementing the dynasty's prestige from an unprecedented position. He has completely discarded the traditional cover-up crisis management style of the previous generation. By letting Princess Anne unleash the punitive blow based on the forensic audit, William sends a razor-sharp message to the entire Commonwealth. National service has no place for profiteering. The latest surveys show that over 70% of the British public supports permanently severing Meghan's ties. The House of Windsor has proven they protect the throne, not with glossy press releases, but with due process, bank evidence, and the absolute supremacy of the law. The incident closes, but it tears open massive voids regarding the systems of power and trust. The biggest question right now rests squarely on Prince Harry's shoulders. Will he continue to remain silent, obediently acting as a meat shield, taking every legal punitive blow in place of his wife's financial network? Or will the colossal pressure from the risk of imprisonment and bankruptcy force him to make a ruthless decision? Publicly cut ties with Meghan, hand over all classified documents to save himself, and seek a narrow path back to the Windsor family. From a state management perspective, this incident raises an extremely serious question about the British royal family's internal security loopholes. If a royal member could easily set up shell companies in the US, open offshore accounts in the Virgin Islands, and calmly sell national information for months on end right under the nose of the Buckingham Accounting Office, then just how loose is their surveillance system in reality? The public has the right to question, is Meghan's network the only case of profiteering, or are there still other underground financial pipelines silently sucking the blood of the National Treasury's reputation that have yet to be uncovered? More profoundly, this story forces us to look straight at the naked truth of power-tainted marriages. When vows of love are materialized through anonymous consulting contracts and tax-dodging trust funds, where lies the boundary between family affection and criminal complicity? Harry once believed he left the royal family to protect his little family. But in the end, he was turned into the perfect legal tool to shield a ruthless commercial scheme established from the very first day he stepped into the church. If you were Prince Harry, being backed into a corner with a barrage of financial allegations closing in, would you choose to continue silently bearing the blame to protect Meghan to the end? Or would you expose the whole truth to seek a chance to return to England? Please share your thoughts right down in the comments section. Hit subscribe to the channel so we can continue to accompany one another and expose top-secret audit files, the fiercest internal purges hidden behind the doors of the elite.